Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores. Welcome all members of the committee and welcome all members of the public who are with us here in the chambers, as well as everyone watching us via the live stream. We're glad you're with us. Second item on the agenda is the land acknowledgement, and this evening, Councillor Halpin has that.
We acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional lands and the treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which consists of the Chippewa of Saugeen and the Chippewa of Nawash unceded First Nation. We understand this land holds immense significance to the people of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. We appreciate those who live and work alongside us today and who continue the traditions of their ancestors as stewards of the land we are privileged to inhabit. We thank them for the contributions they have made in both caring for the land and in shaping this community. We commit to truth and reconciliation. We acknowledge the truth about what happened to Indigenous people because of colonization, and to reconciliation, which begins with each and every one of us. And just as a reflection, I am happy to see that the land issue is being settled at Sabo Beach. And I think that these are positive steps to move us forward in our relationship with Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. As a local government and public organization, we are dedicated to learning about Indigenous culture, to fostering a better relationship with First Nations and their people. And we commit ourselves to actions that move us forward on a path to healing along with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation.
Okay, thank you. So that moves us on to item 3, disclosure of pecuniary interest. Ask any member if you have a pecuniary interest to declare at this time. Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime if you need to. We have no additions, deletions, or amendments. We have no minutes to adopt this evening, so we'll move right on to our public meeting. And we do have one public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment application Z 2023-005 for Weichel and 164 Albert Street South, Southampton. This is a public meeting under the Planning Act, and the meeting on this file is now open. The purpose of the public meeting is to learn about the application and to hear from members of the public. First, we will receive a report from planning staff. Then we will hear from the applicant or their agents. Then we will hear from any members of the public. Members of the public are advised that the ability to appeal the decision on this application may be limited if you have not provided comments on the application before the decision is made. Comments may be made verbally before the committee or submitted to staff in writing before the bylaw is passed. After we have heard from the public, the committee will discuss and consider a recommendation on this application. So I will now ask the planner on the file to present this application.
Thank you. The purpose of the application this evening is to seek a site-specific zoning bylaw amendment to address reduced commercial floor areas and to recognize existing site deficiencies incurred by the change of use in the single detached dwelling. The site is currently occupied by a single detached dwelling and a separate commercial building. If approved, the application would facilitate the interior renovation of the dwelling to permit a chiropractic office on the first floor with a dwelling unit on the second floor. No change is proposed to the existing commercial building. No comments of concern were received from agencies. We received comments from a neighboring property owner with concerns with potential parking overflow. The site requires 16 parking spaces for all the uses, and currently the site exceeds the parking requirements. This concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we will now hear from members of the public, and to begin, we'll hear from the applicant or their agent. Does the applicant wish to speak? If you want to say anything, you should come up to the podium and just introduce yourself and just turn on the mic so folks can hear you.
Matt Weichel, and one of the owners of the building. I don't really have a lot to add to the planner's report. We look at it as a good use for that building. We've been working within the confines of the whole building, not wanting to tear it down. Maintaining what we have and working with that.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I assume that's the only presentation from the applicant, and so we'll ask if there are members of the public who are here to speak either in support of or with questions, concerns, or objections to the application. I do have Jeremy and Katie Cranenberg on the list here. I don't know, Jeremy or Katie, you want to say anything? Make sure to introduce yourself there, Jeremy, when you come up.
Hello, I'm Jeremy Cranberg. I live on 225 Spence Street. So that's, I can see the corner of that lot from my property, which is not a problem at all. But according to the map that I got in the mail is not up to date. So what they gave me, is there's the three houses they built behind me in 2020. I'm just concerned. I know my taxes are probably gonna go up due to the circumstances as well. And the map on the back side. It was saying like it's not up to date as well. I'm just concerned about that, but I know it's gonna happen. I'll let it be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have, I'll ask the clerk and the planner, do we have any other folks online who wish to speak to council on this file? And are there any written submissions that were not already discussed in the planning report, presentation, or oral submissions? Okay. All right, so we will then ask if any committee members have questions on the application before we close the public meeting and discuss the application. We'll turn over to Councillor Halpin and then come to Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I think that this is a good use for that building. One of the things I noticed that it is an old building with an historic plaque on it, and it's good to see that the building is going to remain. As with things like this, I like to think if we can't have a business like this on Main Street, where can we have it? So in my opinion, this is a good place for this and a good use of the land. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question of clarification. I know that one of the residents, neighbors who wrote in with a concern about parking overflow. In the report, it says that the site requires 16 parking spaces for all the uses. I could count 14 in the back and 3 in the front of the blue building, so that's 17. I just want to make sure that that's correct. Is that correct? Julie, I guess.
So yes, 17 parking spaces is the amount of parking that they are providing, and they're required to have 16.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any further comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, sorry, I'll get you next. John, I'll get the Vice Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Davinsky. Okay?
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, and I just know Mr. Weichels here. Is it fair for me to ask a question of the applicant or not?
Yeah, you certainly can ask.
I
a
just
question
wonder,
if
Matt,
you
are you planning on doing any work, Matt, to the actual building, the
Oh, yeah,
lot? I mean externally, I'm referring to.
externally?
Yeah.
We might clean the brick, we
Yeah.
put new windows in the building, but the whole inside has been
Yeah.
completely redone, yeah. Or is
Completely.
being redone.
I'd be more referring to the external, because it's, it's an
Yeah,
old,
yeah.
what year's on that building, Matt?
1878.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So cleaning of the brick, that would be a nice,
Yeah,
that'd be a nice change.
can I make one comment while I'm up?
Certainly, yeah.
Um,
Go ahead.
It occurred to me today, I found out that one of Southampton's early historic homes is going to be demolished next week. And I realized the difficulties in the planning process, and planners are all busy. We've been working on this application for about 8 months to get a permit to put a commercial use in commercial zone. But if you want to get a demolition permit to tear down one of our historic homes, you just go in and in 10 days you have a demolition permit and the house is gone. And that's exactly what happens once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year in Southampton. And I'm only raising that now because I'm here and you guys are a captive audience, but it's something that could be considered, right? Like it's something's wrong with that system, and it's that easy to tear down a house, but the process is so Oh, so ponderous otherwise. Funding.
Okay,
Interesting.
any other comments?
Well,
Vice
just
Mayor?
to follow up, but Mr. Cronenberg, thank you for your questions tonight. And just a question really of the mapping, and he indicated it was yeah, out of date. And so just to the planner, is that something, how often is our mapping brought up to date? If, I mean, new housing gets constructed and obviously not showing up, because houses may have been constructed over the last 3, 4, 5, 10 years, but how often is our mapping updated?
If I may, through your chair, so the mapping is updated quarterly, but I should say I think what could be the issue here is the aerial photo. Now that aerial photo is only updated, I believe every 5 years, or maybe slightly less than that. So the aerial photo is from 2020. So yes, it's a bit out of date.
Okay, thanks for that.
Okay, Councillor Davinsky.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had that one letter about parking, and this project seems to satisfy the parking. My question is, will there be one chiropractor in there, 2, 3?
I think, Councillor Davinsky, I think we're going beyond our scope in terms of asking those kind of questions. We're considering the use of the property here, whether.
And I'm considering the
uses-
use of the property because it will affect parking.
Well, I think that we've heard that it meets the requirements of the parking bylaw. I think once you get into asking those kind of details, you know, we need to focus on whether or not the overall use is appropriate, and we can't design the business from here. Are there further comments to Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. And through you, one of the really nice aspects of this property, and I know some of us may have been there when P-Tag opened up in that location, and that was a renovation that the Weichels did, or David Utley, I guess that's the company name, thank you, did on that building. And I was concerned at the time about the parking at the front, the backing out to the highway, and I can attest to the fact that I've never seen a car back out onto the highway from there, even though there's parking spaces there. I think they've done a very good job at ice or putting the parking in a place where you don't notice it from the front, but it also has been a much safer situation than just a driveway shooting out onto the road. I do want to also applaud the many projects that David Utley has done around town, both new builds and renovations. You know, there's a number of historic properties that have benefited from their touch and have had changes of use, and those buildings have gained an incredible new life from that. A good idea really can use an old building. So this is a great thing for the neighborhood. We also have heard recently about the need in this community for improved access to healthcare providers in all kinds of situations. So the addition of a chiropractic service is a real benefit in terms of providing appropriate healthcare situations for residents. So I think it's a great idea, and I look forward to seeing what they do with the windows. The bricks, it'll be nice to have the building spruced up too. I believe that those are yellow bricks on that building. Yellow bricks have a historic reference to the brick factories in Southampton too, so it'll be nice if they get cleaned up. So I do think that this is a really nice use. I appreciate Jeremy coming, talking about you know, the situation in his neighborhood. I think the way that the parking was constructed and screening and that sort of thing, that when we ask for those sorts of additions to projects, that we have a better chance at having uses that abut each other be much more palatable to the neighborhood. So you know, I think it will be hopefully busy at certain times during the day when clients are there, but it's certainly not the kind of business that will be busy 24 hours a day and potentially not necessarily on the weekend. So I think it's a reasonable request for a change of use, and it makes good sense. Thank you very much.
All right, so I still have the public meeting open, so I'll take one more comment from you, Mr. Cranberg, and then I'm going to close the public meeting after that.
I'm just concerned now, since this is gonna be happening. That corner of Spence and Albert Street. And is there gonna be a set of lights there just to slow up traffic? Because people are gonna be pulling in traffic. I'm just concerned about that, because I was heard in 2007, when the Tim Hortons was built, that was gonna be a set of lights there. People are gonna get hurt, and I don't want them to get hurt.
Maybe we can ask the Director of Development Services, if he has any comments about that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there aren't any short-term plans to create a signalized intersection there, but I can certainly review the 10-year plan and see if there is a year that's been earmarked for that in the future.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I'm going to declare the public meeting to be closed, and we'll take final comments from the committee. What I'll do is at this point, I will read the recommendation that's before us. So it is recommended that, subject to the review of submissions arising from the public meeting, that the committee approves zoning bylaw amendment Z 2023-005 is attached, and the necessary bylaw be forwarded to council for adoption. So are there final comments from members before we consider that resolution? Oh, sorry, Councillor Stack and then Grace.
Thanks. I think just sort of playing off of the comments we hear from the community members, I think I'm not opposed to the development. I just want to be clear, but I think it does raise a concern if we have someone expressing a real concern about the safety of that particular area. I think we need to take a bit more of a proactive review of those, of what safety measures, if any, need to be put in place. There are real concerns about people's ability to cross the road. And I think that's a fair request in the community to take a bit of a deeper look. So I just want to perhaps just advocate that we're taking that comment seriously. Thanks.
Yeah, I can say the municipality, it certainly does take that very seriously. And we have a transportation master plan, which involves a detailed study of all of those things. So we'll leave it to the director and he'll come back with any alterations or any changes that he might deem necessary. Councillor Davinsky, do you still have your hand up? I have Councillor Grace.
Yes, if I could have a comment after
Yeah,
that.
so I'll come to Grace and then after her, you, Councillor Davinsky. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am going to support this application. I think, as others have said, I appreciate the use of and preservation of this heritage building. The more we can do that, better, especially in the face of the provincial laws of January 1st, which is going to be taking properties off the heritage list if they're not designated by January 1st, 2025. And effectively, there is not going to be a heritage. There isn't a heritage list now, not as we know it. So I am very appreciative of the work of Devitt Utley and others in our community in preserving these heritage buildings. And this is a wonderful way for us to make it useful to our community, as the deputy mayor has said, as adding to our healthcare contingent. Thanks.
You, Councillor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I will just say that I think this is a marvelous use of this building, and it's a good development. It's, but I will vote no because of the black and white of council. There's no gray area. I think my question was a fair question, and it would just need a yes or a no. You put in 3 chiropractors, and at the height of the busy season, I don't think they will, but I was looking for an answer. But if you did, there would be a lot of parking going on along with all the other parking they have already. So I want them to know that I'm all for it, but council's got me into this cubbyhole where I'm not allowed to ask these questions, so I will vote no.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? I think one comment that I would make is, and I I agree with where Mr. Michael's going on this question of the process. You know, we have a building that's been here for over 100 years, and you have to go, and it's in a highway commercial zone. It predates the plan, you know, and yet you have to go through this long and expensive process in order to be able to use it. You know, in a reasonable way in the highway commercial zone. Like if something is not right with the zoning bylaw, that you have to make that many changes to recognize an existing building and put it to use in a way that makes sense in its location in the 21st century. So I think it's worth, you know, obviously I support the application, and I think beyond that, it's worth looking at the zoning bylaw as it pertains to some of these existing properties and some of these highway commercial zones, because I think, you know, any further around the table, there's a desire to keep some of these buildings and not to see them all tore down and replaced with new buildings. And I think that's a community desire as well. And if you're gonna convince people like Mr. Weichel or others to keep those buildings, you're gonna have to make it tenable for them to do that and not run them through the ringer. So I think that's a note for future. Hopefully it's a thing we can look at as we amend the zoning bylaw in the future, because I think it would be a valuable change. So the recommendation I read a moment ago was actually not the correct recommendation. There's slightly, they've been changed slightly because the format of these meetings has changed slightly. So the actual recommendation is that council approve zoning bylaw amendment Z 2023-005 and bylaw 38/2023. So is there a mover and seconder for the recommendation, the deputy mayor and Councillor Halpin? If there's nothing further, then all in favor. And opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for being here for the public meeting as well. So now we're moving to close to public, and I have a resolution here that council move into close to public session to discuss matters in accordance with the Municipal Act 2001, section 2392 as follows. C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, and K, a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. Is there a mover and seconder? I should actually, sorry, I should also read, it's kind of out of order, but the reasons are above that. A discussion regarding a potential disposition of land to Habitat for Humanity, to discuss negotiations to be carried out or on behalf of the municipality relative to an Ontario Land Tribunal matter, and to adopt minutes of a previous closed to public council meeting. Okay, mover and seconder, moved by Councillor Mintz, seconded by Councillor Grace. All in favor? That is carried. All right, so we'll move into closed and we'll go to a different Zoom link here. Okay. Is there a motion to- Sorry, Brian, just give me a sec here. Okay, so I have a resolution that council arise from close to public session and resume the regular council meeting. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Mayette, seconded by Grace. All in favor? That is carried. So we're rising, and I will report that council gave direction to staff regarding a potential disposition of land to Habitat for Humanity. That council gave direction to staff regarding negotiations to be carried out on behalf of the municipality relative to an Ontario Land Tribunal matter, and council adopted the minutes of a previous closed to public council meeting. Okay, so now we will move on to reports of municipal officers and committees, and the first report is a planning report on local official plan amendment L 2023-003 and zoning bylaw amendment Z 2022-093 for 1596666 Ontario Limited Care Becky Moss. And we'll turn it over to the planner.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. So the application was presented at a public meeting in April of this year. The applicant has since revised the proposal, and I'll actually move to the next slide. So the applicant still does require a local official plan amendment as well as a zoning bylaw amendment. And if approved, the application would facilitate the development of 2 apartment buildings that would be 3 stories in height and a total of 24 units. Next slide, please. So just for your reference, again, there were some photos taken of the property from various angles. Next slide. And next slide. And so on this slide is the original site plan, which showed the 2 proposed buildings. If you go to the next slide, they have amended the site plan, which increases the landscape open space from the previous proposal, which was 18% up to 32%. They did this by reducing the paved area across the site and reducing the walkway lengths around the building. There are reduced driveway width from 16.5 meters to 15 meters, which was previously proposed. And they did increase the number of accessible parking spaces from 1 to 4. So the amended applications do require an increase in density, which is an increase in the local official plan from 90 to 102 units per gross hectare. And the rezoning application is now specifically to facilitate that increased density, which requires an acknowledgement of the reduced lot area, as well as a reduced rear yard from 7.5 meters to 4.32 meters adjacent to the neighboring residential property to the east. There is also amendments related to the parking and the driveways specifically. Next slide, please. And this is just a colored rendering of the proposal, so you can clearly see that they did increase the landscaping open space by providing some additional green space adjacent to Mill Street. The focus for the landscaping is on Mill Street and Bricker Street, with the parking and the entrance to the parking area coming off of the municipal lane to the south. Next slide. We did provide overview of agency comments with the last staff report, and there have been no additional comments provided from staff or other agencies. Next slide. In total, we did hear from 8 members of the public at the public meeting. There was 1 additional comment provided to council earlier today. That was from one of the 8 members of the public who had previously provided comments. All of those members of the public did express concerns and objections to the proposal. And as I understand it, there has been a slightly amended recommendation before council today, so I will defer that over to the mayor.
Yeah, thank you. So there is a recommendation that council adopt bylaw 39/2023 for local official plan amendment L 2023-003, and that it be forwarded to county council for approval, and the council approves zoning bylaw amendment Z 2022-093 and bylaw 40-2023. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Stack, seconded by Help. Questions or comments? The deputy mayor.
Thank you, and through you, it's a question related to, the driveway access off of a municipal lane. It's not a road, it's a laneway. What is the cost? Is the cost of any kind of upgrade to that situation to enable it to be used appropriately, to provide, access to this development? What is the cost of that? Is any of it on the taxpayers, and how or what is required to make, this sort of driveway situation possible? Because it's not a legitimate road. It's not a finish to certain kinds of standards laneway. So I'm curious to know what makes this possible and how much is it going to cost? And is there any cost to the taxpayer for that? Thank you.
Supervisor Development Services.
Yes, thank you. Certainly through the site plan process, we do require developers to improve the access at their expense and their cost. It's not the first time we've done this. We've explored the lane construction and lane improvements to ensure these sorts of intensification projects can still be accessed safely, and we do the same here. In terms of the amount, I don't know. The developer has to pay for that.
Okay, so I'll get Davinsky and then Halpin and then Grace.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And this question may be one of those that shouldn't be asked here, but it's clarification. There was a lot of concern with the people that took part in the earlier meeting that these apartments are not going to fit in to the heritage aspect of the community. Is that a site plan thing where we might say it should be, or what do we do with it?
The planner?
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. We would defer to town staff, but that would be a matter to be best addressed through site plan control. Architectural and landscaping requirements are typically addressed through that stage of the process.
Okay, thank you. I think we should see if some of the facade could fit in to what the neighbors were concerned about as far as being able to fit into what they consider a heritage area. So maybe we should bring that up at the site plan state. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Halpin and Grace.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Councillor Davinsky, I like your points that you brought up, and we do get another crack at this to look at it. What I like about the proposal is they went from 18% green space to 32% green space. With a proper site plan agreement, I believe that we can satisfy the neighbor's needs or the neighbor's desires to have the property fit in with their neighborhood and reflect the character of their street. Having that extra green space on the front, moving up to 30%, goes a long way towards doing that. And yes, I agree with Councillor Davinsky that in the next step on the site plan agreement, that we should make sure that this building facade and landscaping reflects the character of that heritage neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are we able to just offer comments, or do you want questions now?
No, anything you like. Yep.
Okay. Well, I also applaud the increased landscape space from 18 to 32%. I also appreciate the fact that there are now 4 accessible parking spots instead of 1. When I looked at the official plan on this, the official plan governing the area of high density residential development says that council shall be satisfied that the proposal satisfies the following criteria. It doesn't say some of the following criteria. I imply that the interpretation is all of the following criteria. So it talks about frontage or access to an arterial or collector road and or be located within or in proximity to the core commercial designation. So my interpretation of that is that this proposal partially meets, although the report says it meets that standard. I think it's only for me partially meeting that because the entrance isn't directly onto Bricker or Mill, if I'm correct on this. And I have concerns about the laneway as being the access to the parking area. It does, I suppose, meet the requirement for close proximity to community facilities. Schools, a bit of a stretch, I guess, for high school, but not for elementary schools. Shopping and recreational facilities, yes. The adequacy of municipal services to accommodate the proposed density. I'm not sure about the proposed density, and here's what I'm concerned about with this. Our official plan says that you move from medium density to high density at 40. That's the benchmark of where that changes. So I asked the planner to confirm if there were only 16 units instead of 24, what would the density be? The density would be 65. This proposal is asking to move from 90 to 102. 90 is the max under our official plan. But the change from medium to high is 40. So going to 65 with 16 units is still, to me, a significant increase in density. I also think that what that would do would be to have a 2-story. So you'd have 16 units, 2-story instead of 3-story, and that would be more consistent with the buildings in the area, which, you know, in the immediate area, drove around there again today, they're 1 to 2-story buildings, except for the church, which is, of course, has the big steeple. But I didn't count that. It also requires the adequacy of off-street parking facilities. It meets that requirement. The proposed development, this is another requirement under the official plan, is appropriately set back, landscaped and buffered from surrounding residential properties. As long as the site plan does, I would like to see that landscaping and buffering between the property to the east increased. If, you know, in that, I think that would be appropriate. The house on that property is not directly adjacent, which is a good thing. But there is a small bunkie or shed or something like that. But it is a nice lawn area, and I think it would be really appropriate to have that buffering. And as I said, I really appreciate the fact that that increase in landscape space has increased. So although I appreciate those changes, I am going to vote no on this because I think that moving to 16 units to that 65 density level, 65 units per hectare, is enough of an increase in high density. It's, as I said, it's like 24 units per hectare over that 40 or over that 41, which is what you'd have to get to. And I have concerns about the access of 30 cars in that laneway. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Further comments from Councillor Mayette?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I think we laid out conditions for the developer when we had this present to us last time, and my recollection surrounds the 18 to 32%. And they've come back and met what we asked them to do. And I think if we don't allow high density in this location, right next to the post office, right next to a former arena, public parking lot, a church on the other side. It's surrounded by downtown core, and this is like walking distance to everything in downtown Port Elgin. If we're not going to allow that kind of density here, where are we going to allow it? This is like the ideal location. And I think, the developer here is asked, done what we asked them to do. The bit about the access from the laneway, there's already a driveway into the back of the insurance building there. And what's on the other side of the laneway is a public parking lot. So it can only get better by having a proper driveway put through there. So I think we'd be doing a disservice to the community by not approving this. Certainly, I can understand that people that live right across the street being unhappy about it, but you bought and you live in the downtown core. So you have to expect there's going to be commercial, residential, high density development at some point when it's happening everywhere else around. So I am going to be supporting this based on that. Thank you.
Okay, further comments? Yeah, just for myself, I will be supporting this. I think this is absolutely, as Councillor Mayette put it, this is the right kind of development in the right location, the kind of thing we need. I think it'll serve so many needs, and it'll be a great opportunity for people to live in close proximity to the core in a more affordable way. And I also want to make the point that I don't think it's going to have one iota of a negative impact on that neighborhood. I think we'll have a good site plan, and we're going to have some really good people move into that building, and they're going to work in our downtown, maybe work around our community. And I know there was a lot of concern about how comments from the neighbors about, how great a neighborhood they have. And I think they really do have a great neighborhood. And I think these people are going to be great new neighbors. So I think it's going to be a great development just in general. And so I'd certainly be supporting it, the Deputy Mayor.
I think it's a good location for a different style of housing. I agree with Councillor Grace though about the jump. I did want to just ask you, Mr. Mayor, you just said it will provide something that's more affordable. How do we know that? How is that something that can resonate so strongly that it gives justification that we can share and we can be committed to? Because even when they were here, they talked about all of the ground floor units being built to have accessible standards, but there's nothing that says they have to rent them as accessible units. So we just use that expression. I'm just like, we've got to start to have something that gives us, because we talk about attainable and affordable, but that's not what's getting built. So, is this going to be another one that if it gets approved, something will get slapped up, and instead of saying, residential units, it'll be luxury residential units. And, that doesn't imply any kind of affordability. So I'm just curious, why would we make that assumption? Like, where's the proof there?
I guess it's a question to me. I would say that it's well established that higher density is less costly, right? If you build a single family home, it's $1 million. You build a duplex, they're 500 a piece. You build a fourplex, they're 250 a piece. You build 24 units on a property that could have 2 single family homes, you're going to have less expensive housing. Does it mean that it's affordable to somebody who doesn't have a job or somebody who's on social assistance? Probably not. But what we can do when we have rental units in the community is subsidize the rent, which is what the municipality is doing with Bruce County, right? We can, but what we lack now are the units to subsidize. So I think even if they come on board, and I've said this many times around here, even if they come on board at full market at $2,500 a piece for a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom, which is sort of where we're at now, even if they come on there, we can offer subsidies to bring those numbers down. You can take a $2,000 rental and make it a $1,500 rental, which gets it closer to that range. And we're already offering those subsidies. That's not pie in the sky stuff. We're actually doing that, but we have nowhere to put that money if we don't get units built. So in my mind, as I say, it's a complicated issue. but you pick the easiest things that you can do quickly to have the biggest impact. And the thing you can do most quickly to have the biggest impact is build rental units and subsidize rents. And so in my view, it is an affordability play. I know there's disagreement about that. And I certainly respect the views of others who have a different view, but that's my view, I guess, is all I can offer. Are there further comments? Councillor Mayette.
Quickly, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that to expect a developer to build affordable units is pie in the sky. Nobody's gonna build brand new homes or brand new apartment buildings and make them affordable and lose money. I mean, I don't want that kind of developer in our neighborhood. I don't want that kind of developer coming here that's gonna build crap that's gonna go for $1,000 or $800 a month. But the way that you get affordable is by the supply and demand. You add more apartments on the high end, and the people who are living in the cheaper ones, maybe above storefronts or in people's basement apartments, those people get to move up and vacate the lower end one to allow more people to come into the cheaper one. That's the way the system works. It's a matter of supply. We're adding supply on the top end. It makes room on the bottom end. Thank you.
Okay, are there further comments? The Vice
Thanks,
Deputy Mayor?
just quickly, Mr. Mayor, and I like the 24 units a lot better than the 16 units. I think it's bringing more housing into our community, which is desperately needed. And you've said all along, and this council said, a majority of council said all along, we need to build them. We need to build the units. We'll look after the subsidies. We've allocated funds this past year's budget, $75,000. Hopefully matched by the county, $150,000 towards rental subsidies. Build them, and we'll look at finding ways to drive that cost down. But the housing shortage here right now, and I mean, they looked at Councilor Madden has mentioned this 17% landscape going to 32%. They've done what we asked them to do. One comment I'd like to make the site plan control a little bit later, but just I want to say it again. I know it's not the right forum tonight, but I will say it. The parking lot at the south end, the municipal parking lot, let's line that with 8 or 10 trees paid for by the developer at site plan J. Please don't lose that thought. I think the more greenery we can put in that area, the better. I mentioned at the last meeting. I'm going to mention again. And I'll mention at the site plan meeting. Let's put as many trees in that location as we can. That lane, there's room. I toured that. There's room there to plant 8 or 10 mature trees. So I know it's not the correct form maybe tonight, but I will mention again at site plan. So let's green it up best we can.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure staff will take that under advisement. So we've had a good debate. If there's nothing further, I'll ask all in favor. And opposed? That's carried. Okay, so now we'll move on to the second one, which is a planning report on zoning bylaw amendment Z 2022-126 Saugeen Shores housekeeping, and we'll turn that over to the planner.
Thank you again through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a presentation for this item, but I'm happy to take any questions from council.
So there is a recommendation that council approve zoning bylaw amendment Z 2022-126 bylaw 41-2023 and bylaw 42-2023. Are there questions or comments? Seeing none, then I'll ask all in favor. Actually, I needed to move and seconder probably, didn't I? I'll learn how to do this one day. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Stack, seconded by Myatt. Okay, all in favor. That is carried. All right, and now we're on to the third one, which is a staff report on site plan for Fuse Apartments, and we'll turn that over to the supervisor of development services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want a couple minutes to highlight some key elements of the site plan. So this one is you'll recall, well, I'll introduce it. It's 332 apartment, purpose-built rental apartment development, north end of Waterloo Street currently. And I noted to the scale that to make improvements in housing availability, accessibility, and adequacy. And the development overall includes 24 3-bedroom units and 44 1-bedroom universally accessible units. And these accessible units are designed based on senior independent living arrangements. We had the zoning decision on this property in 2022. And during that meeting, council made it clear that our support for providing housing diversity and housing options is not unconditional. It highlighted making sure there's a high quality design. We wanted to optimize landscaping ensure adequate buffering from sensitive uses such as the housing on Mary Rose Avenue. And we wanted to make sure the small town charm was balanced in the provision of this housing and other objectives. And the developer, to meet those requirements, examined the following. They moved the building massing and oriented it away from the existing residential areas towards Waterloo and Bruce Streets. They increased the setback from the southern housing, single detached housing, from 13 meters to 28.6 meters. They provided a range of landscaping designs to provide an aesthetic streetscape that doesn't appear to be dominated by buildings. In other words, in front of each apartment building are mix of passive recreation opportunities for residents. It is private, so residents of that building, plus in a sort of treed environment, garden like environment. They've located active and passive amenity areas for residents in the centralized location. And you'll be pleased to know 52% of the site is landscape open space and includes almost 400 trees at a variety of heights, textures, species, provide year-round visual interest as well as screening for the neighbors on Mary Rose Avenue with trees and a privacy fence, a 6-foot high privacy fence. And there is a pedestrian and active transportation connectivity facilities on the site plan. And I draw your attention on that. I'm particularly interested to highlight that on the landscape plan. There's a connection to a future trail on the north that's sort of in the mid block. So users, residents can access the active transportation trail without having to access the street. And I guess I'll leave the comments there, looking for your input and take any comments you have back to the developer.
So the recommendation is the council receive the site plan for Fuse Apartments report for information. First, I'll ask if there's a mover and seconder for that one, Stack and Grace. Questions or comments? Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really like it. Thank you for your work on this, Jay. The 52% landscape open space. Wow. I think that is really incredible considering that I think the minimum is what, 30? Yeah, so that's great, and I applaud you and the developers for working on that. Also, the 44 one-bedroom universally accessible units. That's really terrific addition as well. Not addition, but just an inclusion in the plan. And the covered pedestrian walkway. Can you just elaborate what that?
Sure, if I may. Yeah, the pedestrian walkway, it's not, I guess it's overstated by saying it's a covered pedestrian walkway. Attached to the future trail along the north edge, when that trail is installed, there's a proposed sort of rest stop that's covered and allows some, a respite and, access, weather protection, whatever you want to get to the trail. So it's not just, in the open.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much.
Are there further comments from members? Yeah, the Vice Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, and again, Mr. Mayor, the 44 one bedroom is Councilor Grace and 24 3-bedroom units. Jay, that's just fabulous news for our community and what a shortage we have. And I also love that 52% landscape, and it's good things are happening, Mr. Mayor. Just a little bit of a statement there, but there is construction. They're in the ground and behind the retirement lodge with 85 apartment units. Footings are in, and so help's on the way. The people who are looking for rental accommodation in this community, and I hope this council continues to support the whole concept around rental subsidies, build them, and then we'll try and find the subsidies and help these people who serve, not to stereotype, it's not meant to be this way, but those people who are serving your coffee at the restaurant or drive-throughs, they need help. They need help. I've talked to lots of those people and need rentals and affordable rentals. So the more we build, hopefully we'll drive down the cost. And Jay, I guess the question is, those 330 units, any timing have you heard from the developer in terms of spring or summer, fall, next spring?
Well, they're actively they're considering a summer start, that what they've described is, that they have to put the foundation in, but it has to sit for a few weeks. I'm not the expert on the construction timing, but because of their system, this modular apartment system is that I think 40 to 50 of forgotten the number units are already built and sitting in a warehouse in Kitchener. So they're just waiting on,
Right.
the site to begin construction so they can begin bringing these units up.
I think this company, Mr. Mayor, 400 trees, 52% landscape. I think it's going to be a wonderful development and not popular with everyone over in that area, Maryville's area, but rental units are required, and I think they're going to green up this area, and it's going to be an attractive development. So kudos to the development company that's putting this together. And thanks, Jay, for all your good work on it.
Okay, Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I also just applaud the amount of green space, the effort putting into it to give it a park-like setting. I think it'd be a nice neighbor to have. And I just applaud the green space, the amount of trees, and I really appreciate it when developers cooperated with us in this manner. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Are there further comments? I don't see anything. It's all been said. I'm very excited to see this one come under construction. When you add those two together, we've just done tonight. That's over 350 apartment units just this evening. Discussed at council and starting to make our way through. And the Berries one, that's 600 potential apartment units to come under construction this year. There are currently 1,000 people waiting for Bruce County affordable housing. 500 of them are in Saugeen Shores. So we get these units built, and as the Vice Deputy Mayor says, we figure out how to expand our subsidy programs, combining those with those of other levels of government, and see if we can you get these built and then leverage them to help people earning minimum wage and even folks earning 20 or 25 or $30 an hour, to find ways to help them into them too. All people at every one of those income levels would need help, I think, to get into housing. And so this is one half of the equation, and the other half is working to build subsidized units or subsidize units after the fact. So anyway, excited to see this move forward, and I agree to site plan. I think it's really nice, and I think it's because of the quality of the development, it's going to mean some really nice people are going to move in there, and they're going to be great neighbors in a great neighborhood, and I think it's only going to make that whole neighborhood a better place. So with that, I guess there was a recommendation. It's to receive for information. It's moved and seconded, so I'll ask all in favor. That is carried. Okay, so now we are on to the bylaws, and so go back to my agenda. All right, yeah, so we have item 12 bylaws, and I have a resolution here that bylaws 38, 2023, 39, 2023, 40, 2023, 41, 2023, and 42, 2023 are hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 15th day of May, 2023. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Grace, seconded by Stack. Questions or comments? Seeing none. All in
Mr.
favor?
Mayor?
Yeah, oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's just one comment I wanted to make on 38, 2023, which we talked about earlier in the meeting. I voted against it then. I made my point, I felt, and I said then that I think this is a good development that's going on with the home and so on. And so I will be now supporting it.
Okay. Anything further then? Sorry, John, I don't forget, always make sure to speak up because I'm get distracted. Anyway, if there's nothing further, then I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. Okay. And then we have the confirmatory bylaw. So I have a resolution that bylaw 43, 2023, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores, is hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 15th day of May, 2023. Mover and seconder, Grace and Mayette. All in favor? That's carried. And finally, I have a resolution of this regular council meeting of May 15th, 2023, hereby adjourns at 8:43 PM. Mover and seconder, the deputy mayor and Councillor Stack. All in favor? Council stands adjourned. Have a good evening, everybody.
Good evening.